Well, how are you, fellow streakers? We are so absolutely wonderfully excited to be with you today. We've got with us a guest who we have had on our radar for quite some time to talk to, and we're so glad that she had the time amidst her busy schedule to be able to join us today. She is, self proclaimed here, a military brat, having lived in 5 states and 2 countries by the time she was, wait for it, 15. She claims Indianapolis is home, but now resides in Denver, Colorado, because she really wanted to be close to the mountains. She also has a Master's of Science from Tufts University School of Medicine. During her time there, she learned how to communicate true behavior change. She is obsessed with the mind and body connection because it's wild when you start to see just how connected these two things are. She hates running, and I won't use the expletive she used to say how much she hates running, but so she ditched it for dancing, walking, yoga, and weights. She's got a really cute dog who she built a dog park for in Indianapolis, all right? And she truly believes equity is possible, but to get there, it requires a paradigm shift individually and collectively. Let's go ahead and welcome Erica Ballard to the show, and let's start streaking.
Hi, Erica. Thank you so much for coming on. We're
Thank you
so
for
excited to
having
have you. We are so excited to talk with you today. We've been reading stuff that you have out there, and we're just excited to talk about kind of what you do in your career and at home, and then how streaking has helped you be able to get to where you are and become the person that you are. So we are super excited. So can you start off by telling us a little bit about what your company is and how you got it started?
Sure. So the company, it's called Retain Her, and it's a company that provides the data insights organizations need to retain, recruit, and promote women. And the way I got here was I initially started in the health field as a workaround for gender studies. My dad, who's amazing and well-meaning, was like, don't get a gender studies degree because we want you to be employable. And so I was like, okay, sure. So then I chose journalism, which is, 2008. So that's the joke's on him, but and me apparently. So I went into health as a workaround for that. And because for me, when I really looked at what held women back in a big way, it was their health. They were still today, right? Like we're distracted by the way we look and how much we weigh and all of these things. And so I naively thought, well, if I could just get this out to the masses, because people weren't trying to do it for thousands of years.
No.
Yeah. If I could just get this out to the masses, bam, I would have solved one of these huge issues. And what I quickly learned was a few things. One was that a lot of the health information out there is wrong. The second piece is knowing something is different than doing something. And then the third piece of it was it wasn't really that people were shocked when I said, eat less sugar. No one was like, oh my God, my mind is exploding. It was their mind exploded when they started to realize that the thing that was holding them back was actually the fact that they did not feel valuable or worthy enough of it, and thus could not figure out how to prioritize their time. And so that is where I spent most of my entrepreneurial journey. And then I got pregnant with my now daughter, who's almost 10 months, and who I mentioned before getting on this podcast is going through sleep regression. Yay me. And she, when that happens, as you all probably know, with the amount of kids you have, as you start to think about legacy and how do I want to show up and what do I want to do and how do I want her to see me. And I was able in that thought process to slow down enough to, I call it a download this idea of Retain Her, because it really pulled together my background as a researcher, my fascination with the mind-body connection, my understanding of the way that it's systems, not just individuals that we have issue with, because a lot of the limiting beliefs and my female clients were just like, were indicative of the greater limiting beliefs that people have about women. Right. And so I was like, okay, well, I'll do this 6 months pregnant, and started to follow, for me, like universal pings, like divine God, whatever, all these like pings, and ended up here doing this as a champion truly of moms now, which is so fascinating, as I have a 10-month-old, not multiple. one. But it is looking at all that has been happening, the way that we see women and moms, and truly the power within all of us, but particularly women, that seems to not be highlighted in the way, or even absorbed, and
Hmm.
seen in the way that I think could really transform business and the collective. And so yeah, so that's what I focus on now. It's it's been really fascinating, and I'm really grateful to be here. And I have to laugh at my dad, because I was like, if you would have just let me start at 22, like I'd have like probably a business about like, like I'd been in business for a decade plus. But I went to health as the workaround, and then magically ended back up here.
I do believe though that sometimes those workarounds come back and feathers in your cap, so to speak, of like, okay, I've got this background that I probably wouldn't have had before, but wow, it's really been beneficial in helping me kind of have a more complete picture of what I'm doing. And so I do feel like oftentimes those things. So it's interesting that you had from the very beginning. So from a young age, did you have an interest in gender studies?
I did, but I didn't know it.
Okay.
So I'll give a quick story of how like the first cognitive reason, or time that I started to think about it, is, so I was in this hula hoop contest at 10,
Nice.
Nice.
because I was a really good hula hooper. Like, I mean, I was like primo.
You're like, I was
And
good.
it felt really good. And so I loved it. And the PX, which is a retail store on military bases, like the main one, that's where I went. And I started and they were having this hula hoop contest, and the prize was a PlayStation. And
Wow, that's a great prize for a hula hoop contest.
and for like
That's
a bunch of
great.
10-year-olds, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, it was great. And so
Yeah.
I was like, my brother and I really want this. I'm really good at this thing. I'm gonna go get it for us. And I I tied. So what ended up happening is, like, the adults got so sick of us, me and this boy, we were hula hooping, like no one would drop. And so they're like, okay, you guys are tied. And I was like, cool, I don't need number one. I just need the PlayStation. And so I waited and waited and waited for that PlayStation, and it never came, because they gave him the PlayStation and they gave me this huge stuffed bunny named Harvey.
Whoa.
Oh.
Yeah.
And so you're like,
Wait a second here, guys.
what's up with that?
What just happened here?
And
Interesting.
so
So yeah.
yeah, and you know what a 10-year-old's like. Oh, why can't I have a PlayStation? Where is it? Like, I want it.
Yes.
And I was freaking out because I really wanted it, and no one had a good answer. And that's when, like, the light bulb went off. Like, oh, be grateful for what you got. Like, the message, right? Be grateful for what you got. But it only came to me because he didn't. He got the
He was
PlayStation.
grateful for what he got.
Yeah, he didn't have to settle for less and
He
figure
did
out how to be okay
exactly.
with everything.
Right,
So
right.
yeah, so that's when it started. And then
Okay.
it evolved from there. There were things that I was really interested in, um, when the 15, 16, 17. And when I went into health in the first place, I actually ended up at an HIV AIDS organization, like a PEPFAR, which is the government. It
Okay.
was President Bush's at the time, huge initiative for HIV AIDS. And I really, while I was in communication there, I really was interested in the maternal child health component of it, and did a lot of work there that wasn't paid, and just,
Okay.
Mm,
continue forward.
Right. That's fantastic.
yeah.
That's a super amazing journey and an interesting place of taking you to where you are now. So
Mm-hmm.
as you're moving forward, um, we talk about streaking a lot and different streaks that people have set. As you look back at your life, what things do you see that you're like, these things have consistently helped me get to where I am?
There are two things that come up for me. The first is learning.
Okay.
I'm an avid learner. I'm an avid book reader. I want to read all the articles, all of the things. And so it was, I mean, I would go to school in the summer, and read books and write reports. And so that was a big piece. I never took a break from it. And then the other piece, and this is newer, but I think it's extremely relevant, is my meditation practice. Even with a 10-month old, people say all the time, like, you don't have time for that type of stuff. I'm like, after 3 months, like I can't remember a day that I have not meditated. And I meditate on average about 15 to 25 minutes
That's
a
fantastic.
day. So if I can only get in five, that happens. But for the
Right.
most part, that truly has transformed my life.
And we have several people that have a streak around meditation. And one of the things that I love specifically about a meditation streak is that meditation is helping you really to be mindful. Like it's sitting down and saying, I'm intentionally going to be mindful. And that's what I love about what streaks are is I'm going to intentionally be mindful of this thing in my life that I feel is really important, that I recognize helps my mental health or helps me be a better person or helps me get to who I want to be. However, there's nothing outside of myself that's forcing me to do. Like if I don't be intentional, it's not going to happen. And so I love that so often meditation streak to me embodies what streaking is, which is I'm going to be intentional about who I want to be and the things that I have to do, even though there's no external force that's going to keep me doing that
Yeah.
unless I choose to be intentional about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I love how you put that. And as you said, I was like, actually, there's like two other things that led to the meditation that I've streaked on for forever, but got really solid with one of them about, I don't know, almost a decade ago. So it's movement
Oh,
and
great.
nutrition. So my foray into being intentional was through movement and nutrition because I thought that's what would get me healthy.
Mm-hmm.
And it got me to a point, and then I needed to move into like the mind body connection. I needed to move into the mindfulness practice. I needed to reduce my stress. I needed to go within and understand where that unhappiness continued to live, even though externally everything looked fine.
Right.
Um, so those are the other pieces, but that kind of trifecta of movement, nutrition, meditation, I, I can't not be intentional about those three things.
As you look at this, because so you know you're now mom, 10-month old, sleep regression, everything else, and I know. And by the way, just so you know, our audience that we have out there is 70% new moms or in that arena that are new moms and sometimes a little bit older moms, but 70%, and they're probably asking themselves right now, how
I
in the
don't know if
world
older mom is right. Maybe mom of
more
older
experienced?
children. Can we call it
Yeah,
that?
whatever you. Sorry, I'm trying to work on
I
it.
know I'm teasing you. I couldn't resist. Go ahead.
But as I look at this and I think about, for example, always be learning, and now you've got your work. I mean, you do regular appearance. You're on CBS Denver. You've got all the work that you're doing for running your company. You've got the 10-month-old that is in sleep regression. You've got your balance with your husband and what you guys are doing together. How, what goes into this, into your routine of always learning, to always be a learner? And then you can also progress that also into meditation, because I'm thinking 15 to 25 minutes in a day, that's a lot of time. I mean, even though it seems simple, it's. So what are some of the techniques, some of the things that you do to ensure that you get that what you need?
That's a great question. And the immediate answer that I still think is the right one that came through was letting go of expectations of what it needs to look like. Now, I have to practice this literally every day. This is not an intentional streak, for the record. Like it is like like a universal ping to my head. Like, get it together. Like, come on, you've learned this lesson. But it is constantly remembering if I'm learning, well, let's focus on that. It doesn't have to be that I read a report or that I read a chapter of a book today. It can be listening to an audible for 15 minutes. It can be reading an article. It can be having a conversation with a friend about something that I didn't know. So I've let go a lot of what it needs to look like. And the same with meditation. In a perfect world, this morning I would have woken up. I would have meditated for 15 to 20 minutes before I got on this call. But I was like, showering feels really important to me. So
if I'm gonna weigh the two.
Yeah. And so I was like, I'm gonna take a few, and that was why I was on when you guys were not on camera. I was like, oh, I'm gonna take this moment to clear my energy, be really present, like knock in. And it took 90 seconds, but that's what I did now. And I'm going to go meditate after I put my daughter down for her first nap. So it's like, I don't need this like crazy routine, which I thought I did before a kid, for the record, to get this through. But it was like letting some of the expectation go, and letting my of how it has to look, and then fitting it in where it fits in. And that has always been, when it comes to health, a big piece that I used to talk with my clients about all the time, was make health fit into your life. Don't change your entire life to fit health in. As I say that, what we know is that your life will change, right, as you do that. But like, you don't have to 180 everything. We can just incrementally like make these shifts.
I want to stay on this for just a second on letting go of expectation, because this is huge.
I'm reminded, Jeff and I had a conversation, I don't even know how many years ago. It was a lot of years ago, but it was a long conversation on a road trip. And I don't know if you remember this, but we spent the entire road trip discussing what life would be like if you literally lived it with no expectation. Like if you could just live life with no expectation.
How would your life change?
How would your life change? And I remember, I think back to that conversation because it was so, I look back at my reaction, I'm like, I felt like I was just stroking the cat backwards. It just did wrong with me, and I don't know why. But at the
Isn't
time,
that such a great visual? Stroking the cat backwards.
You're just like, there's just something not right about this. But that conversation has stuck with me, and it has helped me so much to recognize how much expectation plays into things. So the best example I can think is when I had lots of young kids at home and you were traveling. If you were going to tell me that you were going to be home at a certain time, and so let's say you said, I'm going to be home at 6, and you showed up at 6:20, I was ticked. But if you said you were going to be home at 8 and you showed up at 7:55, I was fine. But that's an hour, that's much later in the night. And I remember thinking, why do I get so, and it was expectation. I expected a certain thing. And now as soon as it passed that time of expectation, now I was upset.
Now, to be fair, when I give you that expectation, I think that it's incumbent on me to fulfill it. But when you have the expectation on yourself,
yes.
I think that's where...
I just use that example because it helped me. Because of the time difference, I was like, why do I get so upset when you're earlier, but later than you said, but you can come back late and I'm fine with it.
Right.
And so it's just really, that's the thing I always go back to, where I was like, okay, this expectation thing and understanding the role it plays in life is huge.
Yeah.
Like huge. And the expectations, like you said, that we get from other people because they've said it, or that we put on ourselves.
And I think the one that we put on ourselves is massive. And Erica, that's what I see with what you're saying, is it's just this massive weight of your own expectation to fight. One of the things I look at is imposter syndrome. I'm expected to be one way, and I feel like I'm an imposter if I'm not meeting my own expectation.
Or when you talked about all of these limitations as women that affect us, the way that we feel about ourselves. So you expected to lose a certain amount of weight. You lost close to it, but not what you expected, so you're disappointed. Just these things where it's like, okay, but what about all the things that, what about all the progress I made? But now I'm disappointed because this expectation wasn't it's not where I thought it should be.
I have a mantra card that I read every day now.
Oh, nice. That sounds like a streak.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm only about 10 days in, but I'm hoping I hope the streak goes much longer. It says, I will let go of outcomes and expectations because what is mine will never pass me. And
Oh, that's good. Do you mind saying that again? One more time.
yes, I let go of outcomes and expectations because what is mine will never pass me.
That's really good. So why that mantra? What does that do for you?
So the business that I opened, Retain Her, I think this is relevant, it's so funny. As I started this, I'm like, man, I have so many other streaks. Like,
I know. See, it's amazing how you start to see them.
For me, and I told Jeff this, so if you're like, don't talk about this on the podcast,
you're fine.
Go ahead. It's like, I'm a very spiritual person. And one of the other streaks is I'm a student of the Course in Miracles. And so they would call it a mindset training. And it's this idea that we're having this human experience, like we're spirits having this human experience. And I really, I'm almost at 365 days of it. So yes, so I'm very close.
That is so
awesome.
Good.
Yeah, and because it's a 365-day lesson book, and so that's how I know. But it is. So with all of that, right? Like, I've been doing a lot of work and understanding that, like, I constantly want something to look exactly as it does, so that if what I want comes to me in a different way, I'm still mad. Like, I'm still angry. And so going back to that Retain Her component, this for me, it's very divinely led. So it's hard for traditional masculine energy coaches or people to help, like, to quote unquote help me with it, because they'll say, okay, well, what are your big goals here? And I'm like, I don't know.
I don't
know.
I
am letting myself watch this unfold, because it started out with like crazy, like, it's research. This is what we're going to do. And this is my background. And it's not that there isn't a research component. There's a massive research component to it. But I have been getting pulled to speak and train and do workshops. And part of me was like, this isn't real. Like, I said, like, when I meditated, what I heard was, I'm going to create it like this, and this isn't happening, even though I'm paying my bills, right? It's something completely different,
right,
than what I set it out for. And for me, that, like, embodies what I mean when I say, like, this is what it looks like to let go of expectation, because I believe that what you want is completely available to you, but you are not necessarily in charge of the how. So if you feel that you deserve something, you do. You do. But you don't get to decide how it comes to you, because there might be lessons or you said it much more beautifully than I will, but like, there's these workarounds, right, that you have to go through. There's certain things, there's certain processes that you just can't understand as a human, right? And so let go, because it's coming. But not if you grasp onto it and hold it on for dear life, because that's not how you hold on to anything that you love. You don't crunch it. Right. You know what I mean? Like, when you hold your husband or partner's hand, you're not, because you might let go. Like,
I know.
Hold it. And you know that there's love here, and then it's okay, and it's coming. So I don't know about.
I love that, because as you're talking about, you don't hold on to it, I'm thinking white knuckle, and I'm like, when do you white knuckle? And I'm like, you white knuckle when you're stressed. You white knuckle when you're driving and you're like, oh my gosh, this isn't going well. Or for me, I white knuckle on a roller coaster because I'm terrified. And so I'm not going to let go. I'm just going to do everything in my power to force this to work out the way that I want. But the truth is that a lot of times you're white knuckling over something. You're like, I don't know how much control I have over this situation, so I'm just going to hold on as tight as I can. So I love looking at it and saying, maybe let go a little bit.
I think that's why. So law number one of streaking is make it laughably simple. And I think it has everything to do with what you're saying, Erica, in regards to letting go of expectation. That's why we call it laughably simple. It's the laughably simple that allows you to move past this ridiculous expectation of outcomes and of accomplishments and achievements, and go to the inner peace and the inner self of saying, your mantra, which I need to memorize as well, but that it's this idea of what's mine, I can hold on to. I don't need to worry about all these extra things that are happening outside of me. I was talking just the other day. Interesting that you bring up goals. So we have another podcast that I do with. It's called The Streaking Professional. So in The Streaking Professional, we talk all about how streaking applies inside of business and work and everything else. And my partner on The Streaking Professional, he talks about how he doesn't set goals and how awkward that is for in that world. You know what I mean?
You almost feel like people say it really. I don't set goals.
I know,
You
it's
what
like,
I mean?
oh, okay.
I'm not going to tell anyone that I don't do that, because it feels like it's saying I'm not an accomplished person and I don't want to go anywhere. I'm just not going to set goals. But that's not it at all.
What I want to add to this, because yes, it's all of that, and I think from like the work that I do, it's a lot of like helping companies and women understand that like this is all like this construct was made by somebody else. Humans made it.
Yes.
Which means that humans can change it.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's the same thing with goals. Like it's just humans expect it.
Exactly.
But what we're all after is happiness. Like happiness, joy, love, peace. And I'm like, well, if that's my quote unquote goal. What if everything I did was around that? Like,
right.
What if when I feel uncomfortable and say this sucks or I don't like this, it's actually an invitation to recalibrate or shift my direction into my quote unquote goals. But it's really my intentions are to feel this way. This is what I want. This is why I want all the goals. That's why I'm okay bypassing them. I want these goals because I think they mean something. So why don't I just figure out what I think they mean, and then make that the actual thing I focus on. And I will tell you, as I say that, it took a while to get here. I wasn't like, oh, I heard it on a podcast.
Right. Wow, I heard it and I changed my whole life that day.
But it's hearing that and saying, oh, maybe that's true. And what do I have to do today to move myself closer to that thing that I want? And I think that, like, from a streaking perspective, right, it's those laughable things. Like, okay, if I want to feel joy, I'm going to play with my kid for 2 minutes and listen to her laugh because I think it's the best thing on the planet. That's it. Yeah. Did it. Congratulations, Erica.
I'm happy.
Yeah.
I'm good.
Yeah. And the world didn't explode and my business didn't crumble and my marriage is still together and all these things, even though I took 2 minutes to feel joy.
Right.
And I would offer that all of those things didn't explode, didn't crumble, didn't go to pieces because you did that.
That's what I was going to say.
Because you actually took that time. And I wanted to go back to and add to that. You talked about the spiritual side of our lives. And Jami and I are very spiritual and absolutely look to, and when we were talking with people about streaking, we often will tell them to start with a spiritual streak. Start with a streak of meditation. Start with a streak of reading scripture or something that is divine in your life, because that will help center you in what really matters. And if you start with that type of a streak, then you can move forward. So this is where I wanted to go to with you is, when did you kind of come to that realization? When did your spiritual life, when did you get that awakening, if you will?
Someone recently asked me this, so I have the answer.
Okay.
So it was probably about almost 3 years ago. I was starting entrepreneurship is the fastest way to self-growth, is what I've learned. And
I'm gonna put that in vinyl lettering somewhere.
Yes, you are.
Entrepreneurship is the fastest way to self-growth.
Yes.
That's deep.
That is.
Yes.
Yeah,
I like that one.
So I had a coach who was very spiritual, and I, as no shade on Catholicism, but like as a recovering Catholic myself, is I had a lot of trouble with that. For various reasons. When I was, my friend Tops people say this. She'll say like, God was chasing you, because she was with me with that coach. She's like, God has been chasing you for a while, and she said that, and I was like, okay, all right, I'll invest. I'll see what's going on here. And I had a friend with that same coach who reached out and said, listen, I really think you need to explore this. Like, I really, really think you need to explore this. And something about it hit, like all of the things. And I said, okay, I'll do it. And so I spent a year actually with someone helping me uncover, what does spirituality mean to me? For me, I use God. Like, what does God mean for me? And what does that look like? And how do I want to create that relationship? And from there, I mean, truly my world turned upside down, because then, the law of attraction and law of abundance, it hits differently when there's a divine bent to it, because you realize, like I said, like, we're all after feelings. We're not actually after the money, although the money is amazing and beautiful and wonderful. Like, I'm after feelings. I'm after connection. I'm after source. I'm after living to like the fullness of my potential. Not for anyone else, but because for me, my language, but because I'm a child of God, and I am like, miracles are my birthright. So like, let me go do that. And so about 3 years ago, I've gone on this journey, and I've been very intentional about it. And I said to a friend actually yesterday, it finally all started clicking like a week ago. It's like, it cognitively, like you hear someone like yourself or me say, like, go of expectations, like what's mine will never pass me, like we are all one, like, oh yes, of course I'm a child of God and I deserve it, and miracle. Right. But like last week, it all, like, everything just, I started to realize, like, my mindset has been changed for a while. Like, I don't say, oh, I can't have that. I'm like, oh my God, I just did that thing. Oh, so cool.
Yeah.
And I realized last week that I was like, oh my gosh, you're celebrating the things you like, you didn't expect to celebrate, like the things you always said you wanted to. Like, oh my God, I talked to these people. Oh my God, I had a fun sales call. Oh my God, how cool was it that, like, I got to spend an hour with this person? Oh my gosh, they called me to ask me for that. That's so neat. And I was like, oh, you've become the person you wanted to. Good job. Keep going.
Wait.
You are on the road to where you want to go. This is great. That is so...
the nuggets that we're pulling out
I
of this.
know.
Miracles,
and you're taking notes.
Miracles are my birthright. We just have to put that in stone as far as miracles are my birthright. I mean, we're coining that one right there.
And the law of attraction, how you start to see things. And I love that you're like, it comes at you differently when you're looking at that from a spiritual perspective. You literally, you see things differently. And I loved what you said too. I was reading an article the other day that was talking about kind of mind and heart. And it said, you look at things rationally with your mind, but you understand them with your heart. And I thought, that's really, that spoke to me, I guess. That's what I'm saying, is that this truth, I think, that you understand things with your heart. You learn them with your mind, but that understanding, and that's why I feel like you were saying, is I'd been hearing all of these things and I've been processing them, but at this one moment there was understanding where I was able to have that connection of, these are the things that I've been learning, these are the things that I've been studying, and then my heart came into it and I understand. Yeah. And I think that's really a neat thing. The other thing I wanted to say just before I forget it real quick was, I loved when you were talking about spending a little time with your daughter, because I look back to when I had lots of little kids at home, and you get caught up in trying to manage everything. And when you have little kids, like the ages that like the age that your daughter is, you can't, they determine so much of what your day is going to be like, based on their mood, based on if they peed on the floor. I mean, just all these things that can happen that will change what you had in mind of what your day was going to be. And sometimes I would spend so much time trying to be a more efficient mom. If I just do this better, and I've got this plan, and I've got this meal plan, and I've got this all set up, then things will go better. And there would be times that I would just, the day would fall out and nothing went better. And I would get so frustrated. And I look back at those times, and there I remember this moment where I just sat down and had to remind myself, why did I have so many children? Like, I chose to do this. and I would have to spend time with my children in fun ways, not doing things for them, not feeding them, not taking care of them, but being with them, to remind myself that I'm like, this is why I had kids, because I like them. Because like you said, I love listening to them laugh, because I love the different stages that they go through of, oh, look, she discovered her toes, or, oh, look, she put a pea in her ear. You know what I mean? These different things that they do that in the moment can be difficult because you're trying to have some level of control over your world. But so I loved when you said that, where you're like, I just sit with my daughter, because that's why we had the kids, is because we like them. We like being with them, and they're fun. But we can get so caught up in trying to take care of them and give them best opportunities and teach them and take care of them, that you forget that you just like being with them.
Like I said, I'm a learner. I will tell you, when it's come to my kid, it is the one thing where I'm refusing to read all of the books. I've read Conscious Parent. It's the only like parent book. I read a couple pregnancy books because it's scary.
That's different.
It's different. Like, I gotta get
Pregnancy is
yeah,
different than parenting. Those
yeah.
That's two different worlds.
Yeah, and so I've read that, and that's and I trust my intuition, because when I do dive into the research too about like moms, particularly today, so many moms, there's the mom guilt, and they feel like they're not doing enough and all that, and like the research shows moms today work harder from like a 9 to 5 perspective if they're getting paid in labor, and
Right.
from a home non-paid labor, we spend more time with our kids than any generation previously. And so I know I'm doing enough. Like, whenever I start to have the guilt, I tell people all the time, I don't suffer from it. I have it, but I don't suffer from it, because I know that like I like this thing that I brought to the world, and I'm gonna hang out with her, and that lack of expectation with her, like, it reminds me why I let go, because my like the best moment of my day literally was when she was crawling on my face yesterday. Like, but if you were to tell me that was going to be the best moment of my day, where her eye was like, her fingers were in my eye and nose, I'd be like, no way.
No. Where's the joy in that? What are you talking about?
No, it's her, like my husband called it her first assault, and it's like it. But I was able to just be there, let go of what this moment needed to be like, and get the thing I wanted, which is, when you're saying a lot of folks on here are moms, is like, if you're wondering where to start, like, just set a timer for a minute or two to do the thing that you actually want to do,
Right.
because that's the piece about motherhood that has been fascinating to me, because I've been interviewing moms about it, is all of these expectations that we place on ourselves and society places on us. It's like, yeah, I get it. And remember, like, that doesn't mean that that's how you have to mom. Like, it takes some work, but you get to start it with the laughable moments of, like, like, hey, I'm just gonna like let my kid throw eggs on the ground and squish them between her fingers, which is a real life scenario that happened yesterday. I want her to eat it. I really do. Really want her to eat it.
And I'm half tempted to have her eat it after she squished it, because then I have to make more.
Yeah, no, that's what happened. I was like, and it's fine. Like,
it's
everything
fine.
worked out okay. And I just, that piece for me has been really huge. And I think that's the beautiful thing about kids, is like, entrepreneurship is one of the fastest ways. And then having kids. So like saying, I'm letting go of expectations. I have someone in my house who forces me to do that, or I will be miserable.
Right.
I don't have to let go of them, but I am going to be miserable if I don't.
One of the, as I listen and think about the streaking and the practical application of what it is that you're saying, if a mom is out there and one balancing all the different areas of life that as a mom you need to balance, and you've got this opportunity to set a streak, which would be to play with my child at least one time daily. sounds laughably simple and sounds like it should just happen. However, when you make it intentional, that gets you over the hurdle of having to worry about when to start it or anything else. It's just like, you know what? I'm going to have a streak of playing with my child at least one time daily. And therefore, that gets me to the place where that may be several minutes of playing, that may be hours, it may be just a couple of seconds, but it's playing at least one time daily that I look at. I know Jami has a streak of reading at least 5 sentences to our boys daily. And that's how long have you had that streak? She's going to look at it right now. I pulled that out of the air. She's looking. But the thing that I see in it is it has brought our whole family together in a way that we never imagined possible, just from that simple thing of I'm going to read at least 5 sentences daily. And the number is?
So I have two numbers because I had Bowen and Chance, which are
right.
both of my boys. So Chance, I've done it for 1,790 days that I haven't missed reading at least 5 sentences to him. Bowen is a little less. I've read to him as often, but as he's getting older and a teenager, there was that one night that he was.
You know what's amazing though? Even as a teenager, he still loves
he does
mom
love
living
to
him.
come in and have me.
And it's a really
read to
neat
him.
moment. He'll come in and he'll be the cool teenager, and he'll sit down and go, "So, Mom, you gonna read?"
Gonna read.
Isn't that great?
But he loves it. And I loved what you said, because this is for me an original streak. This is where I really started my streaking journey, was because this was something that I was feeling. And I loved what you said. I have guilt, but I don't have to suffer from it. I'm going to ponder on that for a while because I like the way that you said that a lot. But this was a mom guilt thing that I looked at and thought, I know that my children, I've known since the beginning of being a mom that reading to your kids is beneficial. Like I knew that. But it was such a hard thing to actually make happen on a consistent. So I'd go to bed so many nights thinking, wow, I didn't do that. And it was frustrating to me because I would go to bed and I'm like, but I did this and I did this and I did this and I did this and that was great. I was glad that I had done those things, but I was also frustrated that I was like, but this thing is important to me. I do want to be reading with my kids. Why can't I make it happen? And so this for me is where my passion for streaking really began, because I have 7 kids and these are the last 2 that I've had this streak with, that I've been able to have this level of consistency with. So for me, it was life-changing to be able to do exactly what you said earlier, where it's like, it doesn't have to look like what I thought it had to look like. It doesn't have to be this perfect situation of me reading to my kids. I have read to the kids everywhere because different things in life happen and I'm like, oh, hey, let's get our paragraph in. I've read all kinds of things to them. It doesn't always have to be the book that we've picked out that we're reading together. So making it laughably simple has given me permission to change that expectation of what it has to look like and to just say, it just has to be a few sentences. That's it. I've read to them while they're sleeping just so that I could be like, okay, this was important to me. And I've had people be like, well, then what's the point? Because they were asleep. And I'm like, well, the point was that it's still important to me. And by doing it every day, I'm reiterating to myself, this is important. And though it was just a small little paragraph and they were totally snoring, and I'll reread the paragraph tomorrow if I need to me, it communicated this was important and you made time for it and you still did it today. Even though it didn't look like what you think it should look like, you still did it. And that's great. And I go to bed thinking, okay, I feel good about that. There you go. Drop the mic.
I'm like, I'm stealing it. Like, I am taking, because there are days where I'm like, why did you not make time to read?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and then I'll sit there and I'll be like, but, like, because I used to work very briefly in early ed when I was in grad school. And I was like, oh, but Erica, you talk to her and you use these words, and so don't worry, her word bank is getting where she needs to be. But I'm like, no, I love reading, and I want her to love reading.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to read to her to allow her the opportunity to. So yeah, I'm stealing.
You should steal that streak. Absolutely.
It's been
a beautiful streak. And because I don't have that streak. That's Jamie's streak, but I often will participate in it because it's so rewarding for me too. I love to listen and see and hear what
and
it
that
is
one
that they're
has
doing.
been, you're right, that's a good example, because the streak for me was, yes, I want to read with the boys, but what was important is I'm like, I want them to be reading. So there are oftentimes that you do that. I've had older kids do it when we were gone, and so it's created this environment in our family that communicates that reading is something that's important to us, and which has been great. Because I have a child with dyslexia who reading was not enjoyable to him, was not something that he valued. It felt like a whip to beat him with. And that was the other thing that really motivated that change. Was I was like, reading is beautiful, and I want you to experience that, even though for you it's brutal. It's so much work. It doesn't feel joyful. So what can I do to make it joyful for you, so that you can experience that?
And I'll just say, Erica, she has read many a science fiction and also battle books that the boys like.
Couple
and
graphic novels,
Yes.
some Star Wars books, some things that I'm like, all right, we're going to read this one. Here we go.
You know what's neat about it too, though?
Captain Underpants. That was my least favorite book. But boy, did the boys love that book. Oh my gosh.
You know, part of it too is spiritual text, because you'll read also to them spiritual text, which is really neat as well. She'll read out of the scriptures and they enjoy it. So
that's why I loved what you said when you said, I want to learn every day. And when you were able to change that and say, okay, learning doesn't mean I have to read a textbook, or it doesn't mean I have to read a nonfiction book, or it doesn't mean I am learning. I had this conversation and learned something new. I read this brief article and learned something new. Just to me, that was so profound, because we were talking about it in context of changing your expectations. But what I saw was also this opening of you looking at your life and saying, I'm learning a lot in a lot of different ways all the time. And then as you see that, now you start to see it even more. And I think you're able to grasp those moments more, because you're like, oh, that's learning. I'm going to do that. And it just fills your bucket, instead of this constant, oh, I didn't do it this way. I should have done it that way. And so that to me was a really great visual when you said, I am learning all the time from this resource and this resource and this resource. And the only thing that changed was that in your mind, you're like, that counts. Like I'm learning. That counts. That's great. And that was my big takeaway for today.
Well, before we end, I still have another question, because I've been dying to ask this question. You mentioned throughout a lot of your work and everything else that women make their decisions differently when they're in the workplace than what men do. And I want to get this right, because this was profound for me. Because if I've worked with and been working with women, I've noticed this, but until you brought it out, it never registered. And here's hopefully I'm categorizing it correctly, and this is where I'd love for your education. You said, I think that the way that you said it was, women will make their decisions based on what their family needs first, and that the workplace needs to recognize that and be able to help that along, because then you will get the best of what a woman has to offer. And I probably just butchered that, but what would you say? How are you seeing that?
Jamie, did you want to say something?
I was going to say, in my mind, you're saying, instead of working against that, let's work with it. Because when we work with it, you're going to get all these resources that these women have to bring to the table, but you're fighting against it and shutting down those resources.
Yes, that it's at the core of it, right? As we look at what quote unquote women need as an accommodation.
Yes.
Oh, she had a baby and she needs 3 months off. Okay, maybe we'll pay for it. Maybe we won't. Oh, family leave, like, because she tends to be the person that takes care of not only her kids but her elder parents, if we have to, because I guess we need her. But here's the thing: you need her. Like, our economy is based on a dual income home.
Absolutely.
So it's not like, oh, this is a nice to have. This is actually critical that you do this, but it stems from the issue, like when you really look at the unconscious nature of it, which is why I had to laugh a little bit when they were like, but they're sleeping. I'm like, you were like, you hear things in your sleep. Like
Yeah,
that is what happens.
that's true.
But the unconscious nature of all of this is that we see men as the ideal worker, and we have for a very long time. For thousands of years, women were moms and wives, or potential moms and wives first, and men went and did like the work and brought home, dollars or whatever it was at that time, right? And so we have this old school mentality, like these conditioned beliefs that we took into 2022, even though we know that that's not true anymore. But because it's unconscious and because it's come from generations before us, we don't know that we equate men with career and women with family. And I know this is true. Harvard did a study: 77% of men and 83% of women 83% of women equated male to career and female to family. So it happens, and it's not, and I'm not here to be mad at you about it. Like, oh, weird. Like you took on conditional beliefs or, conditioning from your family. Yeah, me too. And so we've done this forever. And yet because we still see it as that without knowing it, everything that we create in the workplace has a gender bent towards men. And my ask of companies is to look at that and say, is that really true for me anymore? Because what I have found as a mom is I always thought I was productive. I really did. And then I had kids. And I was like, hold up. I can get things done in 2 hours that took me 2 days. And part of that is because I don't have time to second guess myself. I like all the conditioning and limiting beliefs a lot of women have. I don't have time to sit in that anymore because I got to go home and actually take care of a kid. And so for me, that piece is really important, is like, let's not work against it. Let's work with it, because not only do women take care of their kids, men want to now too. Dads want to be dads. They don't want to be drinking martinis at like 7 p.m. at night doing this anymore. They want to go to soccer games. There's been a cultural shift in how we want to show up as parents. And because this is the argument I make, is we're still stuck into this idea of like, we have to do 9 to 5 work versus allowing for a flexible work schedule. We keep the mentality with it. So if you're going to bring this construct in, naturally you're going to bring the construct of like the mindset construct that came with it. And so this is where I think a lot of the issue is, because moms are saying, hey, like we still want to, like, we want to be workers and we want to be moms. And the pandemic has showed that I can do both. And if you don't want to adjust, then I'm going to leave. And that's part of why we're seeing the labor shortage that we have. It's not that women are going home to take care of kids. A lot of these women are going home to open up their own businesses.
I've noticed that as well.
As I hear you say that, I so love it, because one of the constructs, and this is something that I've had a belief in a long time, we've carried over this industrial age construct, which was you do work at an office and you do home at home. And that one of us has to do work at the office and the other has to do home at home. And that one of us has usually traditionally been the man does work at the office and the woman does the home. Where what has happened, and this is one of the things that Jami and I, when we very first started our family together, is we said, look, we need income. We know we need income. What's the best way to get that together? Not separately, not in a way that's, you do this and you do that, but how do we do that together? And the second thing that we looked at is we said, how do we raise our family together? What do we do both of us wanted multiple children. We did not think that we would have 7. 7 was, we did not figure out what was causing it until number 7. And then we realized what was happening.
We do not do our laundry together
anymore. So, but what you say is so important for today, because now with COVID, and this is something that I've seen, work has gone back into the home. We're all working out of our home today. And we're working, and right in the other room are our children. And my mother lives upstairs, and we're taking care of that right now as well. In other words, what we've done is removed the geographic location of office and have now put it into a place where, more like in the agrarian society, where we all work together and we work through. Jami has something that she's preparing for, that she's teaching. I'm going to take the boys and do that. I'm preparing for something. She's going to take the boys. But we work it together, and we therefore raise the family together, the economy together, everything in this way that we're working together, and therefore breaking down, really like what you said, the social, and I will call it man-made constructs that now need to be broken down and said, we need to have the construct of all of us working together in order to achieve who we want to be. And I believe that's spiritually driven. I look at it and you say, I'm a child of God. And if I'm a child of God, my children are children of God, and God can help me understand how to help them. And that's part of this. So, Erica, we've enjoyed the conversation today. Thank you so much for your guidance and your information. Just before we end, anything else that you would like to, from this conversation, that you have found beneficial or that we haven't covered and you'd really like to share with us?
One thing comes up, and I've been having this conversation a lot, and so I want to just share it here too, is that individuals change the collective. So a lot of times, like, we hear things like these are man-made, but the office is this, and da-da-da, and it's like, yes, absolutely, but all of those things are constructed by individuals, and you are an individual actively participating in it. So it's 100% your responsibility. It's 100% responsibility of the structures to shift to. And I think the thing, my guess is, based on who you are as people, that the people listening to this, they're leaders in their own right. And when the collective doesn't involve all 7 billion people on the planet changing, it involves leaders willing to shift. Because what we're all looking for is permission. Like, what we're all looking for is the okay that I can do this different. And so when you as an individual shift, you actually enable everyone around you to do it. And that's how we create change. That's why in this world that I live in and work in, I should say, I could get really angry and depressed and sad because it's 2022 and we're still talking about gender equity. But what I realize is that there's so much opportunity. There's so much opportunity if we understood the power we have within us.
So
Mic
well
drop.
said. Yep.
That is fantastic. Erica, it's been really our pleasure to have you on the Streaking Podcast today. Streakers, if you want to get a hold of Erica, Erica, what are your handles? Where would you like for them to reach out to you?
Sure. So LinkedIn, Erica Ballard, and then Instagram at I am Erica Ballard. And I'm going to do 2 plugs, if that's okay.
Please, plug away.
The first is I'm bringing back my podcast. Thanks for reminding me how much fun this is. So the Full Plate will debut in June. It's already on from a previous life, and we're going to bring it back. And then I also, if you want to learn more how to champion women in your workplace, I have a workshop that's going on May 24th. And if you're interested in that, you'll find it on LinkedIn as well.
Yeah, please do. Erica is a phenomenal individual, one who we will continue to have a relationship with and hopefully have back on the podcast again to talk more, because we only touched the surface of some of the things that are out there. Streakers, you know that you can download the Streaking app, and we're going to ask Erica to download the Streaking app and start following her streaks on there so we can start to celebrate what she's doing. And you'll notice that there's a full social community on the Streaking app. Download the Streaking app and follow Jami, follow Erica, follow me, and see our streaks. And we'd love to follow you and see your streaks because they give us great, fantastic ideas. You can also ask us any questions. Jeffrey, you can email me, Jeffrey, Jeffrey, at streakingmastery.com, or
Jami, Jami, at streakingmastery.com.
And we have all the social media channels out there as well. If you, honestly, one of the things, this is kind of odd, we looked up Jeff and Jami on Google, and it just says streaking all the way. I mean, every single list is streaking. So there you go. That's how you find it. Hopefully, you'll be back with us again. Erica, again, thank you. And for all of our other streakers out there,
keep streaking.
It's the little things that make a better you.